All right, ladies and gents, welcome to today's video. We're going to talk about an agency growth hack, which most of you probably aren't going to like, but it's probably the best one I've ever found in all the years of running Better AMS. And it happened not through me being brilliant, but just through an obvious thing naturally occurring in the growth of the agency, which has been very beautiful. So I want to pass on this amazing insight to you before you see it so that you can start implementing it as soon as possible and grow your agency as quickly as possible. All right, so the growth hack that we're going to get into is leveraging your people more. And leveraging is kind of a word that some people may not like, but you can just say utilizing your people's full potential more. I think a lot of agency owners will hire people and they will think that the people they're hiring can only maintain and run the systems that the founder had put in place, that agency owner put in place. And that's a very limiting mindset that I had for at least the first couple of years of running the agency, where I struggled with hiring people because I thought, I built these systems. No one ever is going to be as good as me when it comes to building these systems. And dear Lord, I can't imagine what would happen if I let somebody trust these systems. I was 19, 20 years old. I was pretty naive. So hopefully, if some of you are watching this and you're there, you can avoid that mistake. But what you want to do is really just empower your people more and give them more OTB things. So there's in the business stuff, which is like the day-to-day operations. So I consider that like managing the clients, launching campaigns, setting up creatives, talking to clients, troubleshooting client-like issues, and it's primarily running the system. Extremely important part of the agency. Without it, there is no agency, and by no means is working in the business better or worse than on the business, but that is what in the business is. I've talked about it before. And on the business is when you're actually improving upon the systems. Okay, so you are improving upon a system that will make it run faster. You're trying to make the culture of the agency better. You're trying to make the overall machine run faster. You're increasing the throughput of the machine. That's OTB. OTB comes in many different forms, and it could be as simple as you are an account executive in an agency and you're coming up with a better way that you can leverage a tool like Asana so that you can manage your day-to-day tasks better. That's OTB because it helps you get more efficient and get more things done. Whereas doing deliverables, doing tasks, we're talking to clients is more ITB. I still have ITB things to this day, such as reviewing P&Ls, going over profit margins, stuff like that. That's ITB stuff. So trust and empower your team and give them OTB things. And I want to give you a strategy on how you can actually give your team OTB things to work on, because you don't want to just go to them and say, hey, you work in the business, that's great, but I want you to improve the business more. Like, that's not how it sounds. If someone is just doing 100% ITB, they already are having a significant impact to the business. And I don't think many people graduate from putting their people into positions where they can work OTB. Google has a philosophy called like the 20% rule, where 20% of every engineer's time should be spent working on like a random project, doing whatever they want to do to try to improve Google overall and build new things. Something like that. It's similar to that. Now, the thing is, here's the strategy that you can use. Okay, so most people have this dictatorship problem in their companies, and this is a terrible culture. Okay, it is terrible. If I could explain to you how bad this is, I mean, you've probably been in an agency, maybe if you've worked in an agency with a bad culture, it's awful. And the leader of that company is very much just telling people what to do, and that is, results in a lot of unhappy people, unless you're one of the person that's on the side of the leadership side, and you're like also an enforcer of the dictatorship leadership management style. Now, the better style that you should use to build a great culture that will actually help you grow your agency a lot faster. I don't understand how there is leaders out there in this world that operate in this fashion of dictatorship. It's beyond me. Anyways, the better solution that you want to do is you want to understand your team first. It comes down to understanding your team and understanding what their strengths are. And it takes time to understand people's strengths. But you can speed up the process by taking things like a Kobe A personality test, a Clifton Strengths Finder personality test. There's many different personality tests you can take. Those two aren't really personality tests per se. They're more so tests that can give you insights into what this person has affinities for and is really good at and how their mind operates. So you can get them to take these tests, and then you can better understand how each person works. And then what you want to do is, as the leader, you want to kind of figure out a few fronts that you want to ideally try to always constantly be improving. So within our agency, and I got this from Jeff Bezos, so by no means am I like some genius who came up with this. Again, everything that I've ever learned has been from other people. That is just how you learn in this world. So I haven't really come up with any of this. It's just a lot of reading and collecting ideas and then merging them and forming opinions and then trying to articulate it in a very concise format on YouTube to you so you can understand it. Jeff Bezos talks about how at Amazon, they try to focus on things that will never change. They're timeless. And the 3 core things that they tried to really focus on pretty much since they launched was cheaper prices, faster delivery, and wider selection. Those are the 3 fronts that Jeff Bezos has been fighting for over 20 years. And he's actually won those fronts. And because he's won those fronts, he is basically one of the richest people in the world. And his company is one of the most highest valued companies in the world. And so if you think about those fronts, fastest delivery, he was like, I can't imagine a day where a customer would order something and want to receive it later. Customers will always want to receive things as soon as possible. And he understood back in 1997 that the internet was what he called the worldwide wait, I think is what he called it, the worldwide wait or something like that. Basically saying when you order something, it takes forever to receive it. And that was a huge problem. So the other thing was the greatest selection. Amazon sells absolutely everything. There is no other store like Amazon that has the selectability that Amazon has. And then lastly, cheapest prices. By the way, a lot of these things that Jeff Bezos focused on came from understanding Sam Walton and reading Sam Walton's book. I think it's called something in America, Made in America, I think is what it's potentially called. But Sam Walton, founder of Walmart, amazing book. I highly recommend reading it. So Jeff Bezos also got these ideas from other books, etc. Great. So in your agency, you want to have three fronts that are timeless, that are never going to end. And ideally, they're as specific as possible and they're measurable. Think about fastest delivery time. That's so easy to measure. How quickly can you deliver a package to the customer's house? Think about cheapest prices. Very easy to measure. You can have bots that crawl the internet and price match against competitors like Best Buy or Walmart, etc. And Amazon actually does this, and they want to have the cheapest prices on everything. And so they can measure year over year, have we continued to improve our prices, and are we considered the cheapest across the world for everything that we sell? Yes, no, etc. Here's the performance. It's easy to measure. Great. You want to come up with those fronts, and it's hard in an agency. I did my best like a year ago to think about it. What we try to focus on is the greatest results, which to measure that, because that's so vague if you just say the greatest results. It's not like fastest delivery time. But measuring that, we basically kind of have thought of the metric to be year over year client account growth. So is the accounts growing year over year? That's kind of how we're trying to measure the results. And the second one is the utmost efficiency, which is essentially just our operating system and how efficient it is. The current metric we're using to measure this is profit margin percentage. That can be very debated. Like profit margin percentage is such a vague metric to base efficiency off of. But for now, it's what we have set as a front, and it will probably evolve and change as time goes on, and we'll think of something even better or even more specific. But in general, it's just making systems faster, saving everyone more time, and trying to streamline absolutely everything that we possibly can. And the final one, there's actually 2 more, is the best experience, which is we are measuring best experience by 2 things, client retention rate and internal team retention rate. So that'll never go away, where like I can't imagine being part of an agency where I would want higher turnover of clients and people. That'll just never happen. And as a client, you don't want to have to constantly change agencies every 3 months. A client wants to find an agency, love that agency, and stick with it for the rest of their life and never have to leave it just because the results are so good, the relationship is so great, and that agency truly feels like a partner to their company, not just a subcontractor that they rarely talk to, okay? And the last one is MRR growth, which is just the overall MRR of our agency. Are we growing it? So here's the big idea, and I think I've probably talked about this before. What you want to do is go to your people and say, hey, look, and this is your job as the leader, as the founder of the agency. Here's the 4 fronts, or the 3 fronts, or the 2 fronts that we're going after. These are the battles that we're trying to win. A front in like war analogy, you can consider it just like a line that two sides are like battling for, I guess you could say. And the way I like to imagine it is in classic World War I, World War II, you have like the trenches, and there's two sides, and then each side is trying to essentially gain ground to win more ground. So it's called gaining ground. And that's how I look at it, is within these four fronts, we want to be gaining ground, and as much ground as possible every single year, year after year. Now, here's the beautiful thing. Although that we're not perfect, and we have just kind of started this, I think it was like a year ago. If you just sit down and think about what your fronts are, what you want them to be, and then you just decide, even if they're vague, and you try to describe them and get them narrowed down to even what I just described, it forces you to start thinking about, holy shit, I'm not measuring any of this stuff. I need to start measuring it. Last year, our agency didn't really measure things that well. Sorry, the year before last year, our agency never really measured things well. Because we put this four fronts in place, so we're like, okay, we need to start measuring stuff. How are we going to do this? We built an agency dashboard that tracks everything that we thought was going to be important. And it was very useful going through last year, because at the end of last year, we could go back and look at our monthly retention rate, quarterly retention rate, annual retention rate. We could look at how many people we hired, how many clients we lost, how many clients we transitioned through different account executives, and we actually had metrics. Okay, so metrics are, you need to have the systems in place to track the metric that you want to be able to gain ground on within the fronts that you choose, okay? And just by choosing the fronts, this is what I'm getting at here, it forces you to realize that I need a way to measure this. And you don't want to have to measure it manually. You want to be able to measure it almost automatically, where you can just pop into a dashboard and it's updated. You don't have to touch it manually. Now, there is some things that are obviously going to have to be manually done, potentially, but you want to try to remove them. And that's kind of what we're doing now, is we're making our agency dashboard exponentially better. We're going to hire somebody who's going to help us take it to a whole new level and measure a lot better the fronts that we want to gain ground on. So, rambling a little bit, but hopefully this is helping you. What you want to do once you have those fronts is go to your people and say, hey, everybody, here's the fronts. Now, what do you have the highest affinity for? And then people will be like, oh, well, I really want to work on best experience. I really want to work on greatest results. I really want to work on MRR growth, etc. You leave it open to them. Everybody gets to pick a front. They can pick their front. It doesn't matter. And once they pick their front, this is the front that they're going to focus on for a quarter. So it's for 3 months. And within that front, they say, I want to work on best experience. Okay, great. You want to work on best experience, John? Tell me, John, what within that front, what do you think is the biggest bottleneck within our agency that we could fix to make that front exponentially better, right? And keeping in mind, that front best experience is about internal retention rate of team members and external retention rate of clients. So you can either focus on one, or you could try to do both. Probably would recommend maybe just one to start out if this is your first time in this front. And John says, I want to work on, internal retention rate of team members. Okay, great. Well then, John, what do you think is the biggest bottleneck that we have in terms of retaining team members? Or what is the biggest bottleneck? And John might say, I don't know, maybe it's because we don't have enough camaraderie amongst the team. I want to figure out how we can increase camaraderie and activity and overall like bonding between the team. I feel pretty disconnected. Great. How do you think you can do that? What's the biggest asymmetric action that can be taken to increase that camaraderie? So this is the process that you, as the founder / leader within the company, or it doesn't matter, even if you're like a manager, your HR, whatever you're doing, that you kind of need to go through with your team. You can't just go to your team and be like, hey, we want you to help, improve the overall systems of this agency, or improve the overall experience of the agency. It's too vague. You need to build some kind of structure that you can guide them through, okay? So that is how you can growth hack your agency, is by coming up with these fronts. asking your people which one they have the highest affinity for, figuring out what they think the bottleneck is, figuring out what they think the asymmetric action is within that to solve that bottleneck, giving them ideas on how they can maybe improve it, etc. Making sure that the things they choose are aligned with their strengths and guiding them through the process, never forcing them into any specific corner, never trying to say you need to do this, you need to do that, but always just guiding them through, you know, the high level system and letting them come to their own conclusion. You can't force somebody to do something. In my opinion, if someone chooses something, they will do it much better than if they were forced to do something. It just doesn't, you can bring the camel to the water, you just can't force the camel to drink the water. So I hate dictatorships. I really think they are just toxic all around. When you tell people they need to do this, do this, etc., it just doesn't work. There's a context for this that kind of makes sense within certain contexts, but not when it comes to growing the agency. So that is it. Now here's a couple of things you can do. You need to be patient, okay? If you're starting this system, it's gonna take you a few quarters to kind of get used to it and for your team to get better at it. And by the way, this system is tied up with OKRs. I've talked about objectives and key results before. You can search the video in the channel called OKRs if you want to learn about a more specific, structured goal setting framework you can use once someone sets their actual goal. Once they choose the front, they choose the bottleneck, they choose the asymmetric action that they want to work on, then you can turn it into an OKR. That is the process right there. Be patient. And the last thing is after 1 to 2 years goes by, potentially even 1 to 2 quarters or 3 to 4 quarters, you're going to get to see kind of who really excels in OTB. Maybe there's someone in the company who's just a complete builder. They are amazing, or not a builder, but just like someone that really excels OTB, that brings such significant value to the overall growth of the machine that it's beneficial for you to begin pulling them out of ITB and pushing them more into OTB. So I hope you're kind of getting this abstract concept here, but it is very important to understand because it allows you to easily kind of see everything in your mind. So that's great. You can pull your top performers OTB into out of ITB and into you can pull top performers out of ITB and into OTB more if you see they're excelling. And that's really like the process of growing the agency, is watching your people, making sure you're giving them at least like something every quarter to work on that is OTB wise, and then paying attention to who is performing well. And I think in this process, especially if you're a young agency, this can help you kind of assemble leadership better, because leadership is ultimately 100%, 95%, at a minimum 80% plus like OTB type things. And it is important to assemble your leadership team within your agency ideally as quickly as possible without rushing it, of course. So ladies and gents, I think this is one of the most valuable videos I've ever freaking made. And hopefully you guys think the same. It's difficult for me to convey the amount of value that is in this. It's like once you see it, once it happens, then you're like, holy shit, that is amazing. And you just believe in it more and more and more. So that's it, ladies and gents. I only ask for you to do one thing: hit the subscribe button. Much love. Thank you so much for watching this. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button. I won't be surprised if this video only gets like 100 views, because it seems like, you know, the videos that get the most views are like super tactic-y videos. This is it, ladies and gents. This is the secret sauce. This is the ultimate tactic. It's not a tactic, it's a strategy. And this is ultimately one of the best things that you can do. So much love. I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.